When the white man first came to North America, a great part of the continent was clothed in majestic forests. Wherever soil and climate were, trees flourished in countless numbers. But to the early settlers, trees were a barrier. They were something...
Ever since the dawn of time, man has used trees for many different purposes. We've used them to build fires for warmth and cooking. We've used them to build shelters, weapons, ships, even make paper. We get fruit, rubber, and all kinds of different products from trees. But until recently, no one really cared how many trees you cut down. That was because there were so many, and cutting down a decent-sized tree could take hours. But with modern technology, the process looks a little different today. Pretty scary, right? I mean, think about how many trees that machine can take down in just 1 hour. Think about how quickly and easily a whole forest could just disappear. But if you've been paying attention in our economics course so far, you might be thinking how quick and easy that machine makes the production process. And isn't that what we want? Haven't we learned that the free market rewards the firm that can produce most efficiently? And that is what is best for society? Unfortunately, in this case, the winner is the firm that can destroy the forest the fastest. But what about the cost to the environment and future generations? Surely this can't be what's best for society. South Korean economist Ha-Joon Chang once said, "Capitalism is the worst economic system except for all the others." There's no denying that capitalism has done tremendous things for human progress. In the drive to stay competitive, companies are constantly finding faster, cheaper, and better ways to produce goods. They cut costs wherever they can, which minimizes wasted resources. This race for innovation has led to technological breakthroughs that have improved lives all over the world and has advanced the human race to places that previous generations couldn't even have imagined. But it hasn't come without a cost. This same competition and innovation also creates machines that can clear a whole forest in a day. And if a company chooses more sustainable methods, they'll be forced out of the market by companies that can do things much more efficiently and therefore cheaper. Adam Smith believed that individuals acting in their best self-interests is what would be best for society. But in today's globalized economy, it's easier than ever to see that's not quite true. There are many unintended consequences to outside parties when individuals pursue their own interests. What one person does can greatly affect the rest of society, for better or worse. Capitalism gives us incredible progress, but it also brings consequences we can't ignore. You can't enjoy the benefits of capitalism without facing its downsides. And it has some pretty ugly downsides. But despite its inherent flaws, as Ha-Joon Chang said, until a better economic system is created, capitalism is the best we got. Up until now, all we've learned about is how wonderful a free market economy is for society. We've learned that the market's equilibrium price provides the most socially desirable outcome. This is where producer and consumer surplus is maximized and everyone is as happy as they can be. But if you have eyes, then it is very obvious to see that not everyone in the world is as happy as they can be. Not everything is sunshine and rainbows like your economics textbook says it should be. So, what's going on? Well, here's the truth. Yes, competitive free markets give us a lot of benefits, probably more than any other economic system out there. But they're far from perfect. Everything we've learned about the market equilibrium price being the best outcome for society depends on a bunch of very specific and honestly pretty unrealistic assumptions. That stuff almost never happens in real life. In reality, the free market almost always fails to achieve the best outcome for society. Economists even have a name for this: market failure. And it happens so often that, well, it's basically what we're going to be studying for the rest of Unit 2. Including the HL content, that's 14 videos, all about different kinds of market failure. Now, you might be thinking, if the free market fails so much, why do we still use it? Good question. Even with its flaws, the free market still brings incredible benefits. It drives innovation, efficiency, and growth. The problem isn't that markets exist, it's that they need support. That's where government policy comes in, to help fix the failures and make sure markets actually work for society. So, yes, allocative efficiency might be mostly theoretical, but it's still something worth aiming for. It gives us a goal, a direction to move toward. But on the way there, the free market will always have side effects, problems that arise from individual consumers or producers acting in their best interests. And those problems are exactly what we're going to dive into over the next few lessons.
Here's a story that might sound familiar. There once was a group of cattle owners. They all had their individual cows, but they shared a common pasture to have more space for their cows to graze and eat as much grass as they wanted. This way, their cows had a lot more space. But over time, of course, each owner wanted to increase their profits, so they each bought more and more cows. Eventually, there wasn't as much space in the pasture, and some of the cows didn't get enough grass to eat. But still, the owners bought more and more cows so they could make more money. After a while, all the grass was gone, the soil was eroded, and the pasture could no longer be used for grazing. And a very similar story could be told for the fish in the sea or the trees in a forest. In economics, we call this concept the tragedy of the commons. And without careful planning, it's a very frequent occurrence with common pool resources. But to understand what's going on, first you need to know the difference between private goods and common pool resources. Most of the things you buy are private goods because these have two distinct characteristics. One is that they are rivalrous, which is when consumption by one person means that it then cannot be consumed by others. For example, after someone catches a fish and eats it, no one else can eat that fish. Even the device that you are watching this video on is a private good. After you bought this device, no one else could buy it. Another way to think about it is, because you took it, no one else could have it. They could buy another one just like it, but not this specific one. That makes it rivalrous. And the next characteristic of private goods is that they are excludable. This means that it is possible to prevent people from consuming the good. This can be done many different ways, but the most common way that you probably don't even think about is by the price. People that are unwilling or unable to pay the price are excluded from consuming it. If you want to exclude more people, just raise the price, and less people will be able to consume it. But no matter how expensive or cheap you make it, just by using a price, you will be excluding some people. So this is why most products are excludable, because they have a price. Common pool resources, on the other hand, have a special set of characteristics. What makes them unique is that they are rivalrous but non-excludable. A good example of this is fishing in the sea. Anyone can go out on a boat and catch fish. No one is excluded from doing so because you don't have to pay a price for the fish you catch. But when one person catches a fish, that means other people cannot catch that same fish. Therefore, it is rivalrous. The more fish that person takes out of the ocean, the less fish that's available for other people. And the same is true for trees in a forest or water in a river. Now, on a small scale, this isn't a problem, which has been the case for most of history. But because of the competition of the free market and the aim for profit maximization, now fishing boats have improved and are now able to catch massive amounts of fish, which not only takes food away from others, but can cause massive ecological and environmental damage. And the same is true for the modern logging machines that can clear a forest in no time. This is the tragedy of the commons, and it happens when individuals, acting in their own self-interest, overuse and deplete a shared resource, even though everyone would be better off if they managed it sustainably. This is why many governments intervene to put restrictions on fishing boats as well as other common pool resources like forests, water, clean air, and others. If there were no restrictions, these resources would inevitably get used up and not be available for future generations. This is called unsustainable production. It's not that people are greedy, it's that the market gives no incentive to protect the resource. Because nobody owns it, then nobody has the right to sell it, so there's no price signal that reflects its true value. As you can see, there are some very serious costs that are passed on to society as a result, while only certain individuals benefit. That's where the problem begins, and it's also where market failure comes in.
But sustainability doesn't fix all the problems. There are other types of market failure that arise as an indirect result of the consumption and production taking place within the society. These side effects are called externalities, and there are 4 main types. We will be covering each one in a separate video, but for now, I'll just quickly explain what an externality is. The easiest example is to think of a smoker. Smoking is bad for your health, so the smoker themselves incurs some health costs from consuming cigarettes. But is anyone else affected by their smoking? Of course. Everyone who is around the smoker will incur some costs as well from breathing the secondhand smoke. These are external costs to the ones that are not directly involved in the consumption or production of the product. This is why we call them externalities. And because these will affect many people, the external costs of everyone added together will be greater than the costs of the individual smoker. Now, how about the benefits? The smoker obviously gets some benefits, which is why they smoke in the first place. But does anyone else benefit? Probably not. So, as you can see, the costs are greater than the benefits. And as we've already learned, this means that there is no allocative efficiency, meaning society is not getting what is best. These external costs are not included in the market price of the cigarettes, so the free market does not incentivize the smoker to smoke less. To better reflect the true costs of cigarettes, society would be better off if the price was more expensive. Then smokers would be incentivized to smoke less cigarettes, which would bring the market closer to allocative efficiency.
As I said earlier, there are 4 different types of externalities, and I'll be making a separate video lesson for each one. For now, let's just take a quick look at the diagram to see why common pool resources and externalities are considered market failure. Hopefully, you now understand that both common pool resources and externalities have additional costs that are not accounted for by the consumer or producer of the good. These costs are then incurred by society. But how do we illustrate that on a diagram? First of all, remember that the supply curve can also be thought of as a cost curve. And because the cost to society is greater than the cost to the individual, it wouldn't make sense to use the same line for both. So now we're going to draw 2 cost curves. The original supply line will be the marginal private cost curve. This represents the costs of production, which wouldn't change for the individual producer. But for the second curve, this is going to be the marginal social cost. As we know, the social costs will also be higher than the private cost. Think about a factory that releases a lot of pollution. If they don't need to pay any taxes or fines for the pollution, then their production costs will be the same as usual. But since society does need to pay the various costs from the effects of the pollution, society's costs will be higher. So we draw the marginal social cost above the marginal private cost curve. Hopefully by now, you know that allocative efficiency occurs at the point where marginal costs are equal to marginal benefits. But up until this lesson, that was always at the market equilibrium price. But how about now? The market equilibrium price is still here, where the demand and supply curve meet. This is where the consumer and producer have made a deal and decided on this price. Both are happy with it. But as we can see on the diagram, once you consider the additional social costs, this is not the point where marginal costs equal marginal benefits, because the costs are actually higher. So actually, the point where marginal costs equal marginal benefits is here. This is the socially optimum point and what would be best for society. This tells us that the market is overproducing and the people would be better off with less. As you can see, the market is not always self-correcting and doesn't always do what's best for society. This is why government intervention is needed. In the coming lessons, you'll not only learn about the different types of market failures, but also about the policies that are used to correct them. Because of how much of the IB syllabus is dedicated to market failure, you can almost guarantee that you'll see a market failure question on your exam. So stay tuned, as the next few lessons are going to be crucial for your success in the IB economics course. But that's going to be all for now. Here are the learning objectives, as always, and I'll see you in the next lesson.